I'm going to show you the incredible power of an LLM that's integrated into your terminal. In this video, we're going to be using Tmux, and I'm going to show you how using an LLM tool, ChatGPT, inside of your terminal can really improve your workflow and productivity. And it's just cool, right? So let me show you what I'm talking about. So the tool I'm talking about is a command line tool called LLM. So here's the documentation on GitHub, and it was created by this guy named Simon Wilson. So shout out to you, Simon, as well as all of the open source contributors who have made this tool so incredible. There's really good documentation, lots of stuff you can do with this. So I'm going to show you some of those things you can do today. First, we'll talk about how to get it installed. And then if you watch to the end of this video, I think you'll get a lot of good ideas about how you can improve your workflow or just have more fun developing using tools like this. You can install it with pip install LLM. If I open up my Tmux, a new Tmux window, it looks like I might have installed it with Homebrew. It's inside of my Homebrew binaries, my executables for Homebrew. So I probably did this pip brew install LLM. So let's kind of see how this thing works. It's going to use OpenAI. So if I say LLM models, it's going to give me a bunch of models from OpenAI, different versions of ChatGPT. So it's going to need access to an OpenAI API key. So go ahead into your bash RC or ZSHRC or bash profile file and add a line like this, where you put your OpenAI API key inside of that line. And while you're generating that OpenAI API key, and while you're generating that key, keep an eye on that window and give a bookmark on your usage page, because there's no usage that's output from this tool. So you'll have to keep an eye on it yourself inside of the OpenAI platform for their usage, just so that you know you're not spending more money than you're comfortable with. But I'll tell you that I haven't spent a lot of money on this. All right, so let's test it out. So I can say, tell me something I'll never forget. And it's gonna give me some thought-provoking idea, which I guess I might never forget, but that's too much. So I can ask it to summarize that. And by including this -C flag, it tells the command line tool, continue the conversation that you were having before. But if I exclude this, it's going to go ahead and create a new conversation. And I could say LLM logs, and I can see all of the previous conversations I've had. It logs the timestamp as well as this conversation ID and the model that I've been using. So the default model is ChatGPT 4o mini, but I showed you how I can list the models, and we could use another model. So I could say GPT 4o, and I could go ahead and ask a question specifically for GPT 4o, and it's just going to pipe that into my terminal. And I could go ahead and add a system prompt onto that. I'm just actually going to stop this. We'll hop up. So that would be with -S. You can add a system prompt. So here I'm saying show your work is the system prompt in this case. So I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of how to use this type of tool. And the ones that I've been doing most often are just simply how to do stuff in the command line. So say I wanted to print the current date and I didn't know how to do that. I could say something like this: Linux print date, output command only. And let's see what it tells me. All right, so it pumps this into my terminal, and I can just type date in order to do that. But what if I wanted the timestamp? I could just say, I don't know, timestamp, and continue the previous conversation, so it has all the context. And then it's gone ahead and done it for me. So I could say this in order to get my timestamp. All right, so what else could I do? Well, let's say I wanted to get help with file permissions. Well, we can get all the files in the current directory with this ls-l. And then what I could do is I could pipe that into an LLM command. So I'm going to take the pipe operator, and then I'm going to prompt my LLM, output these file permissions in human readable format, line by line. And so it's done that for me, and I can really plainly read, all right, my readme, owner, read write, owner. So it's pretty boring stuff. We're going to see a lot of examples of pipe operations as I walk through these, but just another really cool one is you can curl a web page to get its content and then feed that into an LLM. So I could summarize this web page. Let's see how that works. This is a web page for the Internet Protocol Suite, historical context, and all this stuff. Here's an example of how I actually use this in my work as a data engineer. So I had a data set, and I just wanted to be able to do a little bit of light analysis on that without loading it into Python. So I ran a command like this. I said, I have a CSV file. I need to determine the smallest date in the DT column and use a bash command. So I wanted to know like what is the smallest date here in this first column, but I didn't want to have to go through all the work of loading it into pandas and stuff. So I just pasted an example of my my data here. Let me finish my quote. So I'll fire this off, and now it's giving me this bash command that I can run on my file just to get that minimum value in here. So I can just do that like this, right? Without having to know awk or without having to go to the internet or anything like that. It's just all integrated into my terminal. Another time I actually used this in my work was when I was setting up a firewall on one of my servers. And so I just popped open a new tab here. Like imagine I'm down here in my server, SSH, whatever, and I'm doing stuff. And then I want to set up this firewall. So I just hop back to my local system up here. And I was like, like open port 8081 with UFW, and so it cranks out. Okay, and I can see the command. I don't even need to copy it. UFW allow, right? Let's go up. Here it is. So I could grab that one, come on back down, and I could execute that in my terminal. And then I even had a follow-up question. I was like, do I need to restart it after? So again, rather than going to the internet and popping back and stuff, I can just do everything in my terminal. And so the next section we're talking about is code commenting and documentation. And I've prepared a few files here, or you can see them on the left, and we're gonna like use those to illustrate these next few things we can do. So the first one is generating a function documentation. All right, so I have this ML script, and let's open up a new window down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create documentation for this file. So if I go to ML script .py, this is the script that I've prepared. So we have some loading data, some feature engineering, we're processing the data, and what I want to do is create documentation for all of this. The code is presumably fine, but there's no doc strings or documentation. So I can do that with a language model. So here's the command, and I'm saying generate detailed doc strings and type hints for each function. And I'm feeding in with this cat command all of the contents of my file. But let's see what happens. I'm just going to kick this off and let's see what it starts doing. Okay, so notice what is done here. It's saying, sure, below are the detailed doc strings, and then I have this Python thing. So it's not exactly what I'd want. Only output the code. Okay, let's see if that's working better. Okay, and I'm going to say no, let's say no tick, tick, tick. Let's see if that works. Okay, this seems to be outputting the code how I want. And so now I'm going to pump this into a new file. So I'll pipe this into something called documented.py. We're not going to see anything come into the output of our terminal. So let's give this a minute to finish. All right, so that's finished running. I'm going to open up this ML script documented, and this is what we've just generated. So we have like nice type hints with the file path. We have documentation, and it's pretty comprehensive and amazing. What I could do is I could actually open up in a side pane. Let's do this. So WV in order to open a side pane, and I'm going to open up the original script on the left. This is what was output by this LLM tool. So it's using ChatGPT 4o Mini, and we could feed in a more like intelligent model if it wasn't producing good results for us. So the next one is documenting an entire code base. So that example was around just a single function, but here I'm going to show you some stuff we can do with many different files. Okay, so this is pretty cool. So if I clear everything and let's see what we got here. I want to find all of the Python files right here. So I'm going to say find.name, and then I'm going to say star.py like this, and that gets me all of my Python files. Now what I can do is I could pipe this into an xargs, and I could do something like cat. So this will print out the contents of all of these files, all of the Python files in my current directory, just back to back. And then so notice this file's ended here, and then the next file is just starting right away. But I don't really love that, because now we're missing all the context of the file names that the language model could benefit from. Because what I'm building up to is that we can run something like this, and then we can like pipe this into some model command. And up here I have this example, right? Generate documentation for this code base. So how can we get this context about the file names? Well, what I can do is I can run a command like this. And yes, I generated this command with a language model, and I could use xargs I and whatever I have written here. And if I just scroll up, I'll demonstrate what this does. And so now I'm adding the file names right here above the file. So the language model is going to have this context when we go to run a command. And so I want to show you an example for this. I have like a Git repository here, and we're going to do git ls files. So let me go into this folder. Great. What's going on? It's got this quote. Okay, so here's where I am. This is some code I wrote for a course that I sell on my website. What we can do is I can say git ls files, and I'm going to print all of the files, just the ones committed to Git. This could be beneficial because then we're ignoring files that are like data files or things we wouldn't want to pass to the language model. And now I'm going to run this entire prompt. So I'm saying for all of these files, I'm going to pass it through this xargs argument. So for each file, we're going to print the name and then concatenate and then cat out, like print out the contents. And then once we've done that for all of these files, I'm going to prompt it to generate documentation for all of this code base. And then what I could do is I could like pipe this into a README file, and this would give me like a starting point if I didn't have one. But I want to show you what this is going to look like as it outputs. So I'm not going to do that. And here you might run into a step where, like, this might be the step where you've put too much context in and that you've like overloaded the context window of your model, in which case it'll just yell at you and say, nope, too much, I can't do that. And you'd have to maybe hand pick files or something like that. You could also go ahead and hand pick these. I'll show you a way you could do this. So by the way, for me, it worked just fine. And it's just incredible, right? To see that this just cranked out like a beautiful, a piece of documentation for my code if I wanted it. So when I said git ls files, what I could do here is I could put this into, like files.txt, something like this. Now, if I open up this, I could hand pick these, right? So I could sort of cherry pick. Okay, I don't really care about these ones. I don't know. Maybe I don't want any of these ones or something like that, right? And then this would allow you to just say, okay, now output my files, and now I can do my xarg stuff and whatever, and then I'll do my LLM stuff, right? So that's a way you could think about doing this in a more, it doesn't all have to be in one command like this. You can kind of do things modularly. Guys, just a quick interruption to show you the new course that I'm developing. It's on AI engineering fundamentals, and I'm really been putting a lot into this. So I wanted to show you a few of the files that I'm creating. The course itself is a bunch of markdown files, and I've got these open right here. So for example, the introduction, like what is AI engineering? It's an emerging field. What's the difference between an AI engineer and an ML engineer? What is the day in the life might look like of an AI engineer? So I want to, introduce this job and then just really go hard on these skills needed for this. So like programming, low-level programming, what is computer architecture? What's that all about? How to use like C++ and Java just at a high level, and then looking at Python, version control, then going into mathematics like linear algebra. What do you need to know to be an AI engineer? And I'm going to launch this in February 2025. So if you're watching later than that, you can just go ahead and access this course right away. Thanks, guys. I'll let you get back to my video. I want to show you some examples of refactoring code. And at this point, it gets a little bit derivative of what we've already been doing. And now we're going to be working with this ML script messy. Let's take a look at that. This has the same script, but that we were just looking at, right? But now I just put everything into one like monolithic function. And I want to see if we can do a refactoring on this application here. And here's the command I have for that. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not really thinking too hard about these prompts, right? Refactor this code, add comments to explain it. With language models, it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to make sure I'm telling it the right thing to give me the output that I'm looking for. But it hasn't actually really refactored this code for me, has it? It's just in one giant function. So I don't think it understood the task very well. So I should have prompted it in a little bit more detail. Let's continue this conversation. Refactor into multiple functions. So clearly this is way over commented, but it looks like it's now doing the job that I asked it to do. So I have a load data function, a process data, a scale data. Cool, so I'm just gonna cut that off. We can go to the next one. The next example I have is around migrations. So I have an example of a Python 2 script right here, and this has some clear Python 2 elements. I'm taking raw input. When I'm printing, I don't have it wrapped in brackets. I'm doing like print space, which is a Python 2 thing. That's probably why I'm getting these syntax errors. My linter doesn't understand this is Python 2 code. And also right here with my strings, I'm doing this sort of %, which is like a legacy thing where we'd want to use like format or F strings now. Right, so let's refactor this Python 2 script into Python 3. convert this to Python 3, include inline comments for every update you make. And so looking at the output, it's still got these percents for the prints. I don't really like that. Output only the code. And let's just pipe this into a file. Py2 migrated is right here. Let's open this up. And so notice how it did put these kind of like markdown style code things. So I can just come in and clean that up. And then here it's doing the F strings exactly like I thought. And so this is my migrated code. Cool. The next topic is debugging assistance. This is an awesome use case. So let's say I was trying to run that Python 2 script. So I'm going to say Python py2, and it was this one, py2 script. So if I try and run this, it's not happy with me. Like it's missing parentheses to print. So I'm going to copy that error. And how do I deal with this, right? So I could just try and run it in my LLM, and I'll say explain this error, how to fix, ? Let's paste it in here, finish that up. And it's saying, oh, okay, syntax print. Obviously, it's going to tell me how I can update this for Python 3. And so I can do all this debugging in my terminal now. Here's a cool example of generating test cases. And look how cool this is. So I'm just going to paste in that ML script. This is the one with all the separate functions. And it's just going to create my unit tests for me. And so using this type of workflow, you could create all of your tests without even needing to like go into the internet and paste and copy and paste back. Just do it all in your terminal. Another use case for this tool is analyzing logs. Log files can be really ugly and hard to look at. Here's an example of an actual log file from a Docker application that I built and that I run. And notice like the scale of this stuff. So here's my timestamps right here. And this is all happening within a few seconds. So the timestamp here is 3 hours, 39 minutes. And within the course of like a few seconds, we're outputting all of these logs. So these files are really big. And knowing how to parse through these files with command line tools, well, that's a bit of a separate topic. For example, if I had this is my log file here. I could do stuff like grep. So if I wanted to, find just the info lines, I could do something like this, and let's just get the first lines. This would actually be really inefficient. I would want to say, okay, just look at the head of this file and then get me all of the info lines. And I could say, okay, just look at the first, I don't know, like 10,000 lines, and are there any errors, and just put those, it would be like this, error, like that. And this would be all the errors. So this is what I want to understand. Given some errors in my log file, let's like, how do I understand those? So I can put those into a new thing. So I'll say log errors, example dot log, like this. Okay, so I've got that file, log errors example, and now I can run a prompt on it. So I can be like, given these log file errors, summarize and explain them. How can I fix them? Something like this. Okay, now I don't want to close the bracket because I want to paste the errors in here. And so I'm actually just going to open these up right like this, come down to the bottom, yank those, paste them in here, and just send this off to the language model. Yeah, cool. So, these are real errors, right? I'm getting some 503 stuff with Google Cloud Storage. So I should be putting some sort of retry in place for when that happens. And then I'm getting some duplicate key stuff. So I'm trying to write to like a Redis queue with like a duplicate key, which is weird. So I should understand why that's happening and stop doing that. So we're getting to the end here. Another thing we can do is boilerplate code generation. Say I'm trying to build an API or something like that, and I'm just going to say generate boilerplate code for a fast API application with a single route, output only the code, and I'm just throwing it into this app.py. So I went ahead and created this file right here. Again, it's doing the same thing right here. So we can like get rid of those things there. And here's an app. So I can like just, there we go. That's my get request endpoint. Like I can start building on that. Maybe I want an endpoint as well for like post, right? So add a post end point like this. So now it pumps it out into my terminal, and I can come on up and let's see, I can grab this post endpoint. Whoops, didn't do that right. Oh my goodness. So I can grab this, I'm gonna yank it, and I can paste that right up here. So I can get my little post endpoint. Of course, I didn't define my item here, so I seem to have lost my output here. So what I could do is go to LLM logs, and I can find that output. So here it is, and I can come on up, and maybe I just want to grab, I don't know, this entire thing, and I'll just go ahead and paste the whole thing in. All right, so that's some boilerplate code generation that you can do. Let's go back to our README, and I think the last examples I have are around code explaining, which is, again, a really powerful use to do in your terminal of this. So I have all these kind of scripts kicking around. How about this ML script? I keep sort of going back to this. Let's have another look at this. So ML script.py. Looks like this. Say I didn't understand this, or I'm just looking at it for the first time. I can get like an LLM to explain it to me. So I'm going to cat it out, concaten into the LLM tool, and I'll just say explain this code. I don't know, line by line, maybe not, just top level, line by line for difficult sections. Nice. So this would be extremely helpful if it was like a new language or using a lot of new frameworks and things I wasn't familiar with. I will say, in this case, it's debatable whether it's worthwhile to run something like this in your terminal, given that you don't get the markdown rendering that you get out of the internet. So maybe not the best use case for this. But this next use case is really cool, and it's going to be how to provide a detailed breakdown of an entire code base. So I want to run this example on a project called NanoGPT. So I'm going to open this up in Chrome and just show you what it's about. So it's written by an absolute legend, this gentleman right here, Andre Kaparthi. Highly recommend anything that this guy's done, including his most recent YouTube stuff. And this project in particular is very interesting. So we're gonna clone this, and we're gonna ask some questions on a language model to just try and figure out what's going on here without having to read all that stuff. So how can we do this? So I'm going to start by cloning it. So I'm just going to clone it so I have it on my computer. It clones very quickly, NanoGPT, and now I'm inside of this repository, and I've got access to all this data, but I don't really know what's going on right now. So I could print out the README like this, just pump it out. Okay, now let's pipe that into a language model, and I'm going to ask it to explain this project to me using, let's say, one paragraph and bullet points. And here we go. So I could read this and like right inside my terminal, just sort of get an idea of what I'm looking at, what's going on. That's cool, but not amazing yet. What is amazing is this next thing I'm going to do. So let me clear this. So let's say I wanted to find, I don't know, all the Python files in this project. I could say find startup.py. And here's all the Python projects and all of the folders. And just think about how long that would take to do in an IDE, like where you have to open up all of these, and say we want to provide all of this context to a language model. Now, like as of 2025, like today, I'd have to go in and copy all these and paste them individually. But now, using the command line, I could do something like what we were doing earlier with these xargs, and we could like print all of this to the screen, just like this. So I'm going to run this. Boom, all of those Python files have just been printed out to the screen, and we have this cool like sort of context about what the file is. And then from there, I could run a command, right? So let me break this down here. So if I say LLM logs, the very last command I ran was this one right here. So I can continue this conversation. By the way, if I wanted to continue a previous conversation, right, so here's an example of a conversation, and I have this conversation ID. So I could always continue a conversation based on the ID. In that way, but in any case, like I know that the last conversation I had was to get this like summary of this project, right? So I just want to go ahead and continue that. And so right here, I can just sort of paste, all right, we'll continue this conversation. And, given these files in the project, all of this stuff that I'm just pumping into the screen, give me a more detailed explanation. And so now it's going to look at the README file and all of these Python files, and it's going to be able to have this in its context, and I can start talking to it about the code I'm doing. And that's all I have for you today. If you've got ideas about how I can use this better, let me know in the comments below. And if you love integrated AI tools, I think you should check out my video on Cursor AI for NeoVim. It's an amazing tool that provides a lot of the functionality we're talking about today, but right inside of NeoVim. Thank you so much for watching, and namaste.